Hey guys, to help run the forums, host the website, and travel, we've introduced a universal service fee for in-depth coverage, including this video. My goal is to be unbiased and transparent. It's a privilege to serve you. This is not an endorsement. Let's get into it. Hey guys, we're hanging out in Washington, D.C. I just love this park. We've been viewing a whole bunch of the specialized full suspension bikes, and we've got a Haibike here. This is top of the line, Bosch powered all mountain. It's a 6.0 for 2019, and there's just so much to go through. It's one of the first Haibikes I've seen that have the PowerTube battery implementation instead of the external power pack, and it looks so beautiful. Just the weight distribution is really good. Of course, we have the Bosch Performance Line CX high torque, and then they've got this little channel right here. Apparently there's like a cable lock that you can buy that interfaces with that, as well as like a little bag sort of thing. And maybe in Europe, if you got the hardtail version and didn't have the rear suspension here, you could even put a Bosch power pack on top, so you could double up on the battery capacity. I think that is so cool, and I love the shield mechanism that they've designed here, because this is only about 0.3 pounds. I took it off and weighed it earlier, and it actually slides off before you get to the power pack itself, and that's much, much lighter than some of the aluminum alloy shields I've seen from companies like Bulls. Maybe this isn't quite as tough or something, but you're saving a bit of weight, which is kind of a big deal to me. Now, the flip side of that is this bike is fairly heavy, 56.2 pounds, and we are looking at the frame size medium here. It comes in 4 frame sizes. Haibike does a great job, not only with their design and the colors and everything, but with offering multiple frame sizes, so you really get that fit. And this one's unique to me because it has 160 millimeter front suspension, 150 in the rear, and it says 150, 160, so there might be some adjustments that can happen. This is a dual piston. It's got higher air volume, the rear suspension. It's got 3 positions on compression and a rebound adjust, just like the front, and they've got high speed and low speed compression adjust up there. This is a 36 millimeter stanchion. It's got the black anodized coating, 36 being a little bit bigger than like a Fox 34 or 32, and that thickness makes you just a little bit stiffer, so you can get the longer travel and you can handle these plus size tires that do weigh a little bit more. We do have boost hub spacing, 110 millimeters in the front with a 15 millimeter through axle there. We've got that little dial. I love when Fox does that, and we experimented with that before we came out, because the quick release lever, it was kind of up and forward before, and that can get caught on, like, you know, bushes or stumps and roots and stuff. So we were able to dial it and then get it kind of back and up, and that's exactly what you want when you're riding in the brambles. So I'm definitely a fan of that. DT Swiss rims, really nice stuff right here, 35 millimeter, and we do have reinforcement eyelets. I think this was 28 hole, so fewer spokes, black. They look really nice. Everything matches here. Everything on this bike is kind of blacked out, but just a little bit lighter weight that way. I think a lot of the weight is coming from the PowerTube, which does weigh a little bit more. It's like 6.3 pounds versus a power pack with the plastic casing. Those were like 5.7 pounds. And then the Performance Line CX motor, that's 8.8 pounds on that, compared to maybe 6.5 on some of the Broza motors or Shimano, Yamaha. They're getting a little bit more compact. They have narrower Q factors, but Bosch does a really good job with shift detection, which is nice. And they're one of the kind of the fastest, most responsive, most reliable, according to some of the shops that I've talked to, and probably the longest standing in the United States at least. So they have a really big network, of not just of dealers that sell their bikes, but of different companies that have implemented this drive system. And we were looking at this earlier on the Yuba Supermarché, which is like an electric cargo bike. So you want the CX motor, which is up to 75 Newton meters of torque, when you've got, you know, high precision off-road, potentially steep climbing platform like this, or a heavy duty cargo bike. And this one does have EMTB mode set up, which is so cool. I'm going to show you that in just a minute, get into that a little bit more. So coming back to the frame and what sets this thing apart, you've got this little pulley wheel right here, which is using narrow wide teeth pattern. I really appreciate that because it locks in on the chain. So we've got those narrower gaps, and then we've got wide gaps too. And so it's not going to slip. You're not going to get kickback and stuff with this rear swing arm as you're going over bumps and maybe hitting some little jumps on the way down. The chain's not going to get derailed as easily. It's not going to slip. We even have narrow wide chain ring right here, so that's pretty cool. And this is 18 tooth. It's got this extra thick steel guard on the outside. I'm used to seeing just an aluminum alloy one that's not quite as burly as this. That's going to keep just avoid the derailments and maybe even a little bit of protection from below. It's not quite a bash guard because the motor casing actually extends further than the chain ring. This being 18 tooth, it's equivalent to like a 45 tooth traditionally sized chain ring. You know, it'd be about that big. but they have that smaller chainring because the Bosch Performance Line motors have a reduction gearing system, so the chainring spins 2.5 times for every single crank revolution. That's part of their proprietary design, and one of the trade-offs is that there's a little bit of friction there. So if you're pedaling this thing without any power, there's a little bit more work happening. Or if you try to exceed 20 miles per hour, which is the top speed on this Class 1 electric bike, there's just a little bit of drag in there. Not a ton. I'm just trying to be really fair and point that out. That's one of the trade-offs. Also a little bit more noise, kind of a ring, kind of a zinging sound, but it's just super fast, okay? And it's measuring your rear wheel speed. There's a little magnet right over there, and then there's a sensor down there behind the reflector. It's measuring your pedal cadence, pedal torque over 1,000 times per second, and then it's measuring like the pressure of pedaling versus the pressure of gear shifting, and it's supposed to let off. It's supposed to kind of ease back automatically to reduce pressure on the chain and then that sprocket back there. And I mean, this thing is huge. This is SRAM Eagle 12 sprockets on that cassette, going all the way from 11 to 50. So it's almost 500% gear ratio. That's huge. That's really huge. The only thing I think that compares with it is like some of the roll-off, speed hubs and stuff, and they've got this punched out, so they're trying to reduce some weight, but then they have the e-bike specific. This is SRAM GX long cage derailleur, and it does have this roller clutch feature, which I try to show off every time that I see it. You kind of push this forward, and then there's a little locking button right here, so you can lock it in that upright position. See how the chain's really slack right now? So you can do rear wheel service. Of course, we have boost back here as well, 148 millimeter hub spacing. Remember up front it was 110 versus 100. So having a wider hub spacing gives you a sturdier bracing angle on the spokes, and you want that when you have the heavier wheel and you're just taking on some bigger hits. So 12 millimeter through axle in the rear, again, stiff, really burly, probably adds a little bit of weight. I'm gonna try to disengage that roller clutch now. There we go, so it goes back into position. We do have quick release back here as well. So if you need to do some trail maintenance, you totally can. I was, praising the rims here just a second ago, but these tires are pretty decent too, and they're different. So we have the Minion DHR2 in the rear, and in the front, we've got the Minion DHF. Okay, so the tread pattern is designed a little bit more for steering versus maybe a little bit flatter and like big scoops on the back for climbing. And I am going to try to do some stairs later on because I was doing that with the Specialized bikes before, which have a Brose motor, and I wanted to see how this Bosch motor compares. So anyway, coming back to the tires, we've got this like Max Terra and then Exo protection. So I do think they've got some puncture protection development system going on here. So you're not going to get thorns and stuff quite as easily. It's still a little bit of a risk. Really, really good PSI range. I did drop the PSI before we came out here. This is 17 to 35. So it's kind of a low pressure range, and I'm a lightweight guy. And when you're climbing like, I don't know, potentially slippier stuff like stairs or rocks and stuff, the lower pressure lets these tires really grab on tightly, and they are tubeless ready. So you could run these and reduce the weight by not having inner tubes, and that's a pretty cool setup for me. So anyway, coming back to just the geometry of this bike, I always appreciate how Haibike sort of slopes that down tube, so you've got a somewhat lower standover height. The minimum saddle height tends to be a little bit higher because we do have a seat post dropper right here. This is the Kind Shock LEV-DX. Saddle's feeling pretty good to me. We've got these locking semi-ergonomic grips. They're working out pretty well. Flat tends to be what you get with a lot of high-end mountain bikes because you've got gloves and stuff, so, versus ergonomic. And then we've got these, decent, I guess more than decent. They're hydraulic disc brakes with 2-finger levers and 203 millimeter rotors, so extra large. Definitely want that for descending. So they're going to cool a little bit faster and give you a mechanical advantage over these tires. I haven't really called the spec out yet. 27.5 by 2.8. So this is right in the middle of Plus size. Plus goes from 2.6, 2.8, 3.0. So it's right in the middle. This is a pretty popular size. I remember seeing these on some of the Specialized turbo models, Turbo Levo in the past, and this is a very competitive bike to that. So kind of that all mountain, a little bit of enduro, especially with the longer travel suspension fork up front. So coming back to the frame design, kind of angular. This is all hydro formed, and they do have like a gravity cast interface. I really like the implementation of the motor because as large as the Bosch Performance Line CX motor is, it blends into the tubing here. It's not like the big plastic kind of oval thing that you see on some of the other bikes. Plastic skid plate on the bottom. They probably chose that to reduce weight. Color matched. It's looking pretty good. And then these pedals. I actually really like the pedals. I think the crank arm length may be different depending on the frame size. I think these are 165, so I was measuring that earlier. That might come back to, I guess, the travel length on the Kind Shock and even the handlebar. It's a little bit frame size specific, but overall, really nice stuff. Haibike aluminum alloy pedals with kind of fixed pins. They're different color, they're like silver, but it didn't seem like you could screw them down much. They're just sort of fixed. And then this extra long, really thick rubberized slap guard. So I don't know, I feel like I've gone over a lot of the bike, but I just want to call it like Jaguar. They're using kind of name brand, high quality stuff for the cable housings, internally routed, and they've got these bigger grommets, so it's a little bit easier to service for shops, from what I've heard. Tapered head tube, as you would expect, with a nicer suspension fork like this. And then, I want to explain, okay, back up to the brake levers for a second here. Tool-free adjustable reach. That's another nice little upgrade right here. Yeah, we were looking at the bike earlier and see how it's kind of standing up because it's leaning against this log right here. That was perfect for photos, but there actually is a provision right here for adding kickstand. I think it's 20 millimeter, bolt pattern there. So that is pretty cool if you're someone like me who you only want one bike, that's all the room you've got, and you want something that's just super awesome that can handle a little bit of off-road, but maybe you ride it around in the city and then park it in your garage. You don't want it to tip into your fancy car or, bang up your walls. Having a kickstand option is a nice thing, and they've done a really good job covering up that provision right there with a little plastic cover. So kudos to Haibike. I really appreciate that. They didn't have to do that, and some companies do skip it, but a few companies, like I think I've seen it on Bulls recently, it's just a nice little extra that I appreciate. And then look at how thoughtfully they've done the keyhole right here. There's the ABIS locking core. This is the plus code card where you get the numbers and you can match that to a lock, and then again, maybe mount it in this channel. Haibike has their official extras that go on right there, but I don't see any reason why you couldn't try to mount something yourself. I haven't experimented with that enough. I would love to hear your thoughts in the comments or pictures back in the forum, but see how high that locking core is, so you don't have to bend way down and it's not in the path of those crank arms. It's not gonna get banged up or snagged. As someone with, again, sensitive back, I don't wanna reach way down. I wanna be able to do it right up here. Same thing with the charging port for the battery. It's right there, it's up high, right? I really like that. The charger that they include with this bike is the faster 4 amp, weighs about 1.7 pounds. It's a really nice charger. It's gonna charge things pretty quickly, 3.5 to 4 hours for a full charge. On the PowerTube 500, this thing is 36 volt, 13.4 amp hours for roughly 500 watt hours. That's pretty good capacity. I mean, that's, you're gonna get some pretty decent range, and there's even a range readout or an estimator up on the display. I do really wanna show you this, try to get under there. And what I'm gonna do, since we don't have a kickstand on this bike, is I'm just gonna lay it down like this. So I'm gonna take the crank arm, pedal it backwards like that, lay it down. You wanna be careful so that those big disc brake rotors don't get bent, because then they're gonna scrape and make some noise. But this is always how you wanna lay down a bicycle, especially, a mountain bike with those disc brakes, because you've got this long cage derailleur and all the sensitive bits on this side of the bike. This is called the drivetrain side. You want that up. And look what Haibike has done. They put the key and the charging port on the drivetrain side. Some of the other companies make you reach around and there's like the key port is on the other side. So this is a really good, just very thoughtfully done from them, and both of them just very easy to reach. Here's the little plastic cover. There's this silver piece. There we go. It's just that little bit extra, and see how it comes off really nicely. This is what I was talking about. Only 0.3 pounds on that. There's the PowerTube, pretty much naked. Okay, it doesn't have like extra stuff added to it that adds weight. Like Trek, they have one that sits in from the side and it has this handle and everything, which is great so you don't drop it, but that all adds weight. So I really like how Haibike has done this, and this is still an aluminum alloy casing. So the battery does seem pretty well protected, even without this piece of plastic, which doesn't lock on. So that's the thing. If someone was pranking you, they could try to take this off your bike. Probably able to get a replacement pretty easily, because Haibike does sell pretty much exclusively through a big network of dealers globally, and then getting this thing back on it. Charlie, can you help me with this?
Sure.
This is Charlie McCormick. He's here from Electricity Bikes in Washington, D.C. And then we've got our friend Alec here.
Alec, yes.
From like a local news station, was just interviewing us today and kind of getting the lowdown on Charlie's shop and what it means to review a bike. You having fun?
Very impressed.
First time on an e-bike, right?
First time on an e-bike. I felt like a little kid.
That's awesome. You look like a little kid. That's funny.
I felt like a big little kid.
He was
right
having
up
blast.
the hill.
I was going to have him hop on this bike and give you guys, you know, his feedback, because he's tested the other one, which had the Broza motor. I think he was on the Specialized.
That's right.
Right? And the very good drive system on that one, up to 90 Newton meters of torque. This one has 75, but it has the shift detection. And I mean, do you have anything else to say about Bosch from a dealer's perspective here, Charlie?
I mean, Bosch definitely is the gold standard of support. They are, you know, they have all the parts in stock for everything you can imagine.
Yeah.
And their dealer training is probably second to none. So they go and certify dealers that they are actually certified to work on Bosch e-bike components, which is really unique within the industry. Nobody else does that extra step of going to the shops or requiring mechanics to go to regional trainings.
So I'm going to do some quick training here. Will you stabilize the bike since it's like we're not against the stump anymore? I wanted to show the display panel here. Not my favorite display. I like the Bosch Intuvia. It's big, you know, easy to read. You can take it off. But when you're mountain biking, it's vulnerable, right? So they've got this smaller, compact one. This is called the Purion. Bosch does have a new one called the Kiox, which is color, and it would be right here on the stem. And that's, I think it's a little bit nicer because while this one does have a micro USB port right here, I can't really get to it, but it's under that rubber cover. It's not actually functional for charging. That's for like software diagnostics and stuff. Whereas the new Kiox, that one does have an active USB port that puts out a full amp of power so you can maintain or charge a smartphone. But again, how much stuff do you want on your handlebar if you're trying to be stealthy, which is totally what this bike is about. And again, just excellent weight distribution. Everything's kind of hidden. You will hear the whining noise a little bit, but it's just clean. And this is going to be a little bit tougher. It's very easy to reach. It stays out of the way. So on top is a power button right there. We've got a plus, we've got a minus, and then there's a walk mode. Walk mode only works if you're in one of the 4 levels of assist. So you press it once and then hold the plus button like this, and the bike will push itself forward, which could be nice if you just don't feel comfortable riding, or maybe you get a flat tire and you have to limp home or something like that.
Or you're trying to climb stairs and you can't make it up all the way.
I actually used that a minute ago. So, you know, coming back to the readouts, we've got speed. It's in miles per hour right now, but we could change that by holding minus and tapping power, switch to kilometers. And then we've got the 4 levels of assist. The top one is turbo, where it's just like full up to 300%. If we go down to EMTB, that's designed specifically for mountain biking, where you're already thinking about shifting gears. With EMTB mode, it says we'll give you 120 to 300 output, based primarily on like how hard you're pushing. It's more torque reliant. Remember, it's got those 3 signals, but it's gonna like increase the weighting of pedal torque there. We go down from here to tour and eco. So those are the 4 levels, or off, which is kind of cool. You know, you could ride this around like a bike with just a cycle computer, and if you hold the plus button, there is like a headlight function, but this bike doesn't actually have lights wired in. Some shops can wire those in. So remember my kickstand like scenario right there? You could turn this into like a fun little urban bike where you could just cut across any park, up and down stairs, no problem. So coming back to some of the other readouts here, we're in off right now. If I hold the minus key for a second, it cycles from what level of assist I'm in to my trip meter, right? And I can clear that by holding plus and minus together here, and it resets. Great. If I hold minus again, it goes to total distance. That's the odometer. This is a brand new bike. 2 miles. Range. Now, this is the really cool thing. So see how we have just 5 ticks on that battery infographic? 20% increments. That's not very precise. It'd be nice if there were like 10 dots or an actual percentage readout, but we don't have that. Instead, we have range. So as I go from off to eco, it says, we think you can go 36 miles. That doesn't sound like a lot. The battery might not be totally charged, but I think a lot of this is because I've been climbing stairs, and the bike's been working pretty hard over the past mile. So, and we go all the way up to turbo. Now it says, oh, we think you can go 18 miles. So this is very dynamic, and it's one of the fanciest systems that way. I mean, Bosch makes like sensors for the iPhone, like self-driving car stuff. It's a pretty sophisticated system, and that's one of my favorite features is the range thing, because, you know, 56-pound bike isn't going to be tons of fun to ride home unless you're at the top of the mountain and you're ready to coast all the way.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so that's kind of it. I'm going to put this in EMTB mode, and then Alec might hop on there. Look at him, he's excited about that. I see the smile.
You know, one thing I would say when I hopped on, although I ride a bike fairly regularly, I was expecting much more of a learning curve, and there was almost none.
Oh, you were just stoked, man. I mean, it was crazy. He's been hanging out in the shop with us, just making his story, and then we're like, yeah, let's go. Have you ever ridden an e-bike? He's like, no. And he just did it. He just, no problem.
Let's give it a shot.
So yeah, you can point it down the hill or however you feel comfortable, buddy.
Usually it's on the flats or downhill is a good way to start, and it's in EMTB mode.
So you don't have to do anything but maybe shift gears if you need to on the right. There he goes. Looks like he's doing pretty well. And it's just so fun when you're like in a, it's just a playground, man.
I love it.
He loves it. It's super responsive. Look at those brakes. Yes. Oh, you're gonna do a stoppie? He's gonna do a stoppie. Can I trade you real quick?
Absolutely.
I want to shine the camera down there, but any thoughts just while you're...
God, it's just so easy. It's smooth like butter. It's comfortable. And I genuinely, when I first got on this, I thought it was going to be much harder, and it was super simple. One of the reasons that I'm most interested in these is I do ride a lot, and I wanted my wife to join me.
Yeah.
And no way is she going to pedal 1.5 miles up the hills.
Yeah.
And this is the perfect solution.
It's great. Either for like one partner who might be really like athletic and then they want their friend to come along, or, I mean, at some point, both of you could go with e-bikes and one person could dial down the assist if you wanted, and the other person, there's so many scenarios, but I love where your mind is at.
One other thought that I had is the greater Washington, D.C., Maryland area is extraordinary in terms of bike paths and trails and stuff like that. But for some of the folks that live a little further out, say like in Fairfax, that want to, ride in for work, but it's like 28 miles.
Oh, yeah.
This is a fantastic solution. It's cheaper than, all the health benefits of sitting in your car for hours every day.
That's true, so true.
And lastly, with some of the nation's worst traffic, it's just a lot more appealing to, use an e-bike with an assist for 28 miles.
Alec has what we call like the e-bike smile going on here. And the thing is, there are so many commuting platforms. This is really for like the hardcore, the enduro maybe, like all mountain, but it's true, you can use this to get around the city, and then you can have the fun that we're having out here, like going off-road. So I'm gonna hop onto this thing, but before I do want to point out that both of these suspensions, they've got that black anodized coating, which is designed to reduce stiction and protect the alloy underneath. And then, Haibike has this nice plastic guard. It's like a little fender to protect that rear stanchion. I think that's nice. It's another one of those little details that they've got right. So I'll be right back, okay, guys? I'm just gonna hop on this thing. Just so super fast, right? It's one of the most responsive motors, and then the handlebars are staying straight here with no hands because we do have those plus size tires, giving us a lot of maybe, on the one hand, increased drag, but a lot of float because I didn't overfill the tires here. So we've got some float, we've got some comfort, some cushion. You do want to sag the suspension right and everything. That's why it's nice to work with a professional shop that knows how this works. See how everything's kind of within reach. There's the seat post dropper lever right there. There's the, maybe he bumped that. We're in turbo now. Pretty much maxing out the motor RPM right there. Bosch does go up to 120 rotations per minute on their motor. That's becoming like the standard, but in the past there were some motors that would only get up to about 100, 110, something like that. They would fade out a lot. Bosch seems to support pretty well up to that 120, which I appreciate because you could be going down a pretty big descent, seeing a hill, downshifting in preparation to climb, and you don't want that motor to like just abandon you there and then you're like losing speed in the climb and stuff. So it's a really good drive system that way. Okay guys, from here you can see that 18-tooth chainring with that extra thick guard. Really appreciate that. And then there's the sprocket equalizing system, which just helps to raise the chain over that chainstay and then give you a little bit of reduced kickback and derailment because it does have a full plastic guide as well. It's a nice system. It's one that I've seen on Haibike for a while that kind of differentiates them. We got that huge 11 to 50 tooth 12-speed cassette in the rear, and then the SRAM GX derailleur. We might get a little bit of extra weight because of that Eagle, like, full spread. And I've heard some of the other brands go with just like 11 speeds, 11 to 42, and that the feedback there was like, well, you've got a motor support. Do you really need all those gears? But I sort of feel like, how much extra weight is it? And that's kind of a neat part. So to me, I'm sort of a fanboy. I'm impressed that it's got the Eagle. I do love the narrow wide teeth so you don't get the slipping and stuff. We got the motor. I'm going to ride pretty high cadence so you can hear it in turbo. The point is to make this as loud as possible for you. It'd be quieter if you pedaled slower and lower levels of assist. And you'll just get to see the suspension moving and everything too. problem getting up the steps because I was in the highest level of assist turbo, relatively low speed, and I let some air pressure out here. I'm gonna do the walk mode now. So I press walk, hold the plus button. Awesome. Now I'm gonna do some technical stuff. Awesome. Now at the end there, you probably heard the motor, it stopped, right? Like, and that's because I went above 20 miles per hour. So it just kind of fades out and then it's on you. And yeah, there's a little bit of resistance, just a little because of the reduction gear, but you can certainly top 20 pretty easily. And so I didn't want anyone to feel like it's gonna slow you down on the downhills. We got this staircase here. I was able to climb this the other day with some of the Specialized bikes. They got the Broza and Broza S Mag, and just this terrain is fun to screw around on because we don't really have like a mountain bike setting, but the climbing power of these is phenomenal. I think tire pressure was a bigger factor than I thought before. So you know, these ones, they're a little bit lower. It's great that they have that range. You can go very low with tubeless, that's one of the ideas, but you don't want to like lose a tire either, so be thoughtful about how you set these up. Yeah, there's the stairway. I'm just gonna hand this off to you, Charlie. Almost, yeah, there we go. Nice. And back down. Woo.
Well done, well done. There you go.
Rock on, you guys. So it's possible. It's a fun one. I know it's not real mountain biking, I guess, but it is a technical challenge for sure. Would not be able to do that without a drive system, for sure. And that, you know, again, there's a little bit more weight happening on this bike, but I think it's distributed really well. And you know, the ride feels great. I think for me, Haibike has one of the cooler designs. We are talking about a fairly expensive bike here, $66.99, but with the dealer support and the Bosch warranty and everything, it kind of makes sense. You know, these guys have been in the States a little bit longer than some of the other EMTB brands. I think they've done a really good job. For the full write-up on this, including standover height, length, width, all the other stuff, and the forums, I'll see you back at ElectricBikeReview.com. I love you guys. Ride safe, have fun, be respectful. You know, we're here at a park, right? And it's kind of fun. Everyone's having a good time. This is a Class 1 bike, so it would be allowed on more trails. But just want to, you know, have a good reputation for e-bikes, and yeah, I hope everyone can get along. So we'll see you out there. Ride safe.